welcome to the Mrs. V Shift Stories. I'm Scarlett Vesper, Mrs. V, and very excited tonight we have the wonderful Jen Davis. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Jen Davis is from Wise Women, which I love, which is all about supporting finding jobs for women in media.
Media, advertising and marketing.
Fantastic. So we're going to ask our questions. We start with number one, which is your story.
My story. So
Yes.
I am a business partner, I'm a mother, I'm a partner, I'm a friend. So lots of different jobs and lots of different hats. I grew up in South Yorkshire in London around my family. It was it wasn't the 2.4 family upbringing that some people have, but that was fine. I had a great time, but I think what it really did was taught me to be a really strong and resilient person. And there are qualities I think that I needed to have for later on in life, which I think we'll talk about a little bit later on. Went to university, and then from university I went to London, and from there I fell into the world of recruitment, and actually was pretty good at it. And that became basically the career. And then 8 years on, my partner and I, Tony, we came to Australia to do some travelling. We were only meant to be here for 2 weeks, but he was offered a role working with ACP, which was to launch Top Gear into Australia, and that's what he'd been working on in the UK, so it kind of all worked really well. So we said we'll stay here for 18 months, and 10 years later, 2 children, Ava and Charlie, we're still here. So it's been kind of one of those very natural progressions to get here, to get to Australia. And when I came over, I worked in recruitment, and then I moved into executive search. And then I had my first child, Ava, and then took some time out of the industry. And then I ended up working for an executive search company called Talent Capital, and worked with a really fantastic guy who just gave me so much flexibility and just gave me so much balance and opportunity. And I worked with him 3 days a week. And when Ava was 4, we then ended up having Charlie, who's now 3.5. And I went back to work with Chris, again, because he offered so much flexibility and just really enjoyed working with him. And everything I was doing in that role was executive search in media, marketing and advertising. And then Sarah, who is the founder of Wise Women, we got talking one day, and she just had her first baby, and she was like, I really need to do a project. I really need to be doing some working. But Sarah's not the kind of person that's going to basically just sit and just kind of be fulfilled by just looking after the child. She wanted something else as well. So she looked to try and do some project work, but there didn't really seem to be anything in the world of media, marketing and advertising that would basically what she wanted to do. So she sent out a survey, and that was to really find out if there was other women that were feeling the same way. And we got all the results back from the survey, and it turned out there was a lot of women that were in the same situation who had been on maternity leave and were wanting to do some project work while they were on maternity leave. And it was for different reasons. Some wanted just to earn some extra money, some wanted to really kind of just have an additional thinking stream other than just kind of feeding and sleepless nights and everything else that goes with obviously having a newborn. And from there, basically, Wise Women was born.
I love that. And I love that you've actually started a business because you experienced the benefit of having, you know, that done really well in recruitment, finding a job that really supported being a mum, and, you know, that whole appreciation with it. And, you know, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
So tell me, what is the best advice you've ever received?
So, when my daughter...
That was such a big sigh. Was that because there are so many different pieces of advice, or is it the story behind it?
It's the story behind it.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's advice that I was told in a really difficult situation, but it's advice that I always go back to now whenever I'm facing a challenge. And it's advice that I give to a lot of people as well. And basically, is when my daughter was 6 months old, she was diagnosed with cancer. And she's fine. She's all good now. She's a happy, healthy, fun, nearly 8-year-old girl. So she's doing really well. But it was at that time when obviously just everything was going on and just so much was happening that it was really just difficult to be able to compartmentalise what we were having, the journey we were about to go on when we found out about this diagnosis. I remember being sat in a room one day and we'd had 2 weeks of tests and my daughter was in intensive care and we didn't know what's going to be happening, and we were just kind of really just thinking, how are we going to get through this? How is Ava going to get through this? And the doctor that our oncologist, she was a lady called Dr. Sue Russell, just a fantastic woman, just incredibly calm, just really kind of spelled out what the next 12 months of our life would be. And this 12 months of our life was going to be helping Ava through 8 to 10 rounds of chemo, different operations, and really getting her on the road to recovery. And she was really confident that she was going to be okay. But I remember sitting in that room thinking, how are we going to do this? How are we actually going to get through this next 12 months? And she said to me, and Tony, she just said, don't look at it as in a 12-month journey, just take it step by step, day by day, treatment by treatment. And we did just that, and we got to the end of the 12 months, and I look back and I just thought, look what we've just done.
Isn't that amazing?
And it was the advice that I kind of always taken on board now, and I think you always have to look at a perspective or a situation that you're in and think, don't look at how I'm going to get there, just take it step by step, and before you know it, you'll look back and think, wow, this is what I've just overcome.
It is, it's so true. It's that thing of, and I know in my own life, it's just deal with today.
Yeah.
It's like, deal with today, because that's all there is.
Yeah.
And because a lot of the time it's in our heads,
Yeah.
you know, like that.
Yeah.
It's the fear of the, you know, it stands FE, fear of, I don't know what the aneurysm,
Yeah.
there's an anagram thing around it, and it's fear of what you don't know.
Yeah.
And it's so true.
Yeah.
What great advice.
Yeah, and it was, and it stayed with me, and I've passed that advice on now to lots of different people in different situations. So yeah, just take each situation as it comes and take it step by step.
Love it. Well, we're grateful for that advice.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm glad everything's all right.
You're welcome.
As well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Number 3, what was the catalyst for success for you?
That's a really good question, because how do you define success?
Yes.
And I think everybody has a different definition of success. And I think my catalyst for success was really my childhood and upbringing, because my childhood and upbringing just taught me to be, just as I said before, like a really strong, resilient, independent person.
Yeah.
I always knew that I had to create my own success.
Yeah.
Because if I didn't create my own success, there was going to be nobody for me to fall back on. So I knew that I had to be independent, and I knew that to kind of be independent, you had to have success in your own way. And I think really the catalyst for success and that got me on that path was the independence that I created for myself, and being in a job that I really, I guess, had to drive for and create kind of the financial independence. And then the success that came from that was a confidence in myself that I knew I could do it on my own.
Confidence.
And it, when you did the Vicky interview last week, the week before, from Just for Success, and she was talking about the self-imposter, and it's kind of you get this person niggling in a way in the back of your head going, oh, but can you do this, can you do this? And yes, of course you can, and you've got to have that confidence. And the success, I think, comes from me in terms of having that independence, but then having the confidence to be able to say, I'm going to do this. And this is where the whole Wise Women piece came into play, is that I think being confident enough to start the business and being confident enough to have that success and taking this kind of new, I guess, idea into a marketplace, such as media marketing, advertising, that wasn't necessarily about flexibility, but getting people to really embrace the flexibility and embrace the idea and embrace the business. And I think the success is obviously just knowing that you're doing a really good thing.
Yeah.
And I've got 2 beautiful kids, I've got a great partner, we live in Sydney, and for me that's a success.
Gorgeous. Love it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Now, number 4, which is, what do you use as a tool for challenge? I mean, I love the advice that you obviously use that to get through. Is there another tool for challenge that you use?
To stay true to myself.
Yeah.
And I think just to trust my gut instinct, and try not to really overthink things, because it is very easy. And look, I'm I'm guilty of doing that a lot. My
Yeah.
partner will say that I'm guilty of overthinking things and worrying too much. But I think in terms of taking on challenges, it's just being just a really strong individual and being confident, and going back to the advice that I was giving is just take that challenge step by step and try not to worry about what might happen, because you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So you just have to go with it, and you just have to deal with the facts that you have to hand at that particular time, and make a decision or make a choice or make a step or whatever it might be based on the information that you have to hand, and just trust in yourself that it's the right thing to do.
Do you find that because you work in recruitment and you're dealing with people's issues all the time?
Yeah.
Have you found or learnt something from the women that you speak with around what they do?
They just trust themselves. And a lot of the women are in the same situation. Is that some women that I meet kind of have those confidence issues, or they've been in that situation where they've thought, can I do this? Am I actually capable of taking on this job? Am I good enough to be able to do this job? Yes, you absolutely are capable of doing this job. But I think it's a common thread that runs through a lot of women that I meet through the Wise Women in Business, is that they do kind of sometimes have that crisis of confidence, and whether they're just coming back from maternity leave, or whether they're just about to take on a new CEO role, or whether they're about to just go into a boardroom where they're the only female, kind of at some point or another they have that confidence issue, and that person in the back of their head saying, can you do this? And I think that they've just got to have this confidence to say, yes, I can do this.
Such an important thing. We were just talking about it before we started. Confidence is key.
It is key.
It is key.
It is key.
What do you think is the issue with society today?
We were talking about this before. Something that I've just become really passionate about and just finding out a bit more about is homelessness and the epidemic in women over the age of 50. And it's actually very scary about how you can suddenly have everything and then all of it just get taken away from you. And I was watching a programme on SBS which was talking a lot about this, and they had 3 different women that have been successful in their own right for what they felt was success, and then found themselves either living in their car or just having absolutely nowhere to go. And a lot of it kind of comes from just a situation where just something just went wrong in their life, and they kind of went on this downward spiral. And this is another reason. It can happen like that. And it can happen just like that. And not enough people know that this is kind of going on out there for women, because a lot of these women aren't actually kind of saying that it's going on out there because they're actually ashamed of it.
And that's the big thing that happens, because what we were talking about was that a lot of women, what they do is they get married, they have the kids, and they get time away from work, and then they go back in, or they try to go back in. They're either too old, they don't have the confidence, and it just is a downward spiral from there, because they're divorced and end up being on the street. And apparently, I think it's over 50% of women over 55 have the chance of being homeless.
And this is another reason why we're so passionate about Wise Women, is that after the age of 35, over 57% of women in the media, marketing, advertising industry just disappear from the workforce. And one of the reasons for that is that they can't find a flexible role that will allow them to have the career and allow them to have the family as well. A result of that is a knock on to their superannuation. So they get to the point where they need to draw on their super, and their super is half the amount of what a man's super is. And again, it kind of goes back to this program that I was watching on SBS, and these women, they had no super. They just had nothing. So something needs to happen to the industry to help women kind of really get them back into the industry, get them back into the workforce, and make them and help them become financially independent, so that they don't find themselves in that situation later on in life. That's
right. They need support. I mean, I remember I was a panellist at one of the agencies, and remember a girl came running up to me and saying, "Oh wow, how does it feel to be the only 40-year-old in the room?" And there was 100 women, and I was the oldest one there, and I hadn't even noticed. But and she said to me, "And where do all the women go?" And I was like, "It's true. Where do they go?" And the problem is they go and start their own businesses because they can't get employment. But there's only a very small percentage of businesses that actually succeed.
Yeah.
So what happens to the other people?
Yeah.
then?
Yeah.
So
And, yeah, and I mean, just going on
Yeah.
as well is that the childcare rebate is about to change as well. So basically, that's now going to be means tested. So there's women that come back to work, and the government have been talking for a long time now. We need to get women back into the workforce. We need to get women back into the workforce. They're now means testing it. So people and families that earn over a certain income no longer get that rebate. So that's going to make it even harder for women because
How does that become
women-
harder? It's amazing.
I know. So women are sitting there and wanting to work, but for them financially, it doesn't the sums
It
just
doesn't
don't add up.
Because I've just been talking to a girlfriend who's a single mum, and she's the same struggle. It's like I'm working to pay for the childcare. She doesn't get support from
Yeah.
her partner. And so there's the struggle of going, I want to be with my child, I can't even earn the same amount of money,
Yeah.
and they're stuck.
Yeah,
And so she's like, well, I'll move out of Sydney. No,
Yeah.
I'm going to move back here. Or,
yeah,
so it's really tough, and,
It's really
and
tough.
I'm glad that the conversation is happening now.
Yeah.
We just need to have more of it.
yeah. And with the whole financial thing with Wise Women is that we do different events. So last year we did 4 different events across the year, and one of them was about owning your own financial future. And we got kind of 50 of our members, our Wise Women members, all came along, and we had a panel and a panel of experts, and we had some wealth advisor, we had a property expert, we had a mortgage advisor, and it was really just helping and educating women that this is what you can be doing now to kind of help support and
for your
bulk up your
future.
super, bulk up your super for the future, so that you're going to be in a place where you are a bit more financially independent.
Well, that's part of doing This Is the Event, which we'll be doing in this wonderful
Beautiful room.
hotel in the Langham. And it is about that, is about education and informing to saying there are different solutions,
Yeah.
and we'll be doing a finance panel, and of course you guys will be there too.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
looking forward to it.
Celebrating all the wonderful things that you're doing.
Yeah,
Love that, love that.
thank you.
So number 6 is teach me something I don't know.
So, 800 children across the year are diagnosed with cancer. And this is a number, I mean, with cancer, it's one of those things where there's obviously a lot of research going on, and a lot more children are surviving from this, which is fantastic. But still, a lot more needs to be done. And the Garvan Institute is basically created something called Genome Power. And that's where they're looking at the genome sequencing of each child's cancer and each child's tumour. So they can look at kind of the DNA within that cancer, within that tumour, and then what they can do is create, what's the word that I'm looking for? Completely lost my words. I've completely lost my train of
That's
words.
So they're doing something they're getting information from the kids
Yeah.
that have got it, and they
Yeah.
discover
And they-
what
yeah.
genealogy.
Yeah, and then basically they create each individual treatment for each child and each child's cancer. Because at the moment it's one treatment for all, and that
I
necessarily
see,
may
okay.
not work for every child.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
with the genome sequencing, is that they're looking a lot more into a child's DNA.
amazing.
They're testing about 400 children's genome makeup, and off the back of that, they'll then create individual treatment for each individual child, which will obviously then help more and more children survive cancer, which is absolutely
Awesome.
fantastic.
I love that.
And I think it's one of those things where, for us, when Ava was diagnosed, is that you don't realise that all this is going on. And when we went into the kind of hospital and we kind of got into really understand that there's a whole different world there. And
oh, look, it's scary.
It's very scary.
When you go into it. My dad was a cancer surgeon, so we had a lot in the family. My mum was a nurse, so we saw a lot.
Yeah.
And also when I had a scare as well, you suddenly dip into this world
Yeah.
where you go, oh my God, and suddenly it's a really important, vital world that
Yeah.
you need to understand and
Yeah.
you hope support for.
Yeah.
And that you don't hope it happens to you, but you've dipped into it and you've seen
Yeah.
the importance of supporting.
Yeah, and just want to really be able to kind of create awareness that this is actually a world that's happening out there, and this is happening to young children, but the research that's happening is just absolutely phenomenal, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
going to hopefully save.
Gorgeous. I'll put
Yeah.
a little link on below to that.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you.
And what was the biggest shift that happened in your life?
Having children.
Of course.
Cause
Yes.
and look, this is obviously this comes back to Wise Women as well, is that you have children, your life completely changes,
Yeah.
your priorities completely shift, and you kind of, on having this career, and you just doing fantastic things, and you really only have yourself to think about, or your partner to think about, and your friends to think about, and then you have children, and just obviously life just changes from there. So I think for me the biggest shift was obviously having children and having to reprioritise life and reprioritise what was really important to me, and then going back to obviously that Ava thing as well, and that was a massive shift for me, and that was really where I thought, what's really important in my life, and what's really important in my life is children, and making sure that I've got happy, healthy kids, and but to actually enjoy them as well, and that's where I'm always really appreciative of the fact that I had a lot of flexibility in my role before children, and I was able to go back to that, and that's really the key driver for me to being part of Wise Women and building Wise Women, is that I want other women to have that balance. And it's important that businesses out there kind of really embrace flexibility, and put together strong flexibility strategies for their businesses to get women back into the industry, and to get women to be able to have that balance, and to have that balance between work and also children as well. It's so important.
It's such a big thing, because I know recently I've spoken to Marilyn Spicer, she's in HR, but she talked about the fact that a lot of employers now understand the importance of flexibility much more than they did, because they have to keep their employees happy. And I think that, I mean, it is about education all the time, because that is for them to understand the benefits. But the key thing is trust. Is that trust between employer and employee. So, because they will give you 500%. And I know that when I was given that trust as an employer, and they said, you just do your job, I don't care where you do it, at home or at work, I was like, gave him everything, because he gave me that trust, and I think they forget that. Whereas I've got another friend who absolutely, they follow everything down to a T. You have to tap in, tap out, and they just do their job, and that's it.
And then they go home. And we did a lot of research recently and commissioned a white paper, and some of the stats that came back from kind of flexibility across Australia was quite eye-opening, and 79% of people would prefer flexibility over a pay rise. So flexibility is so important, and it's not just about women that want flexibility. Kind of millennials and Gen Z, they're looking for flexibility as they kind of move through their careers. So it's something that's happening, and it's something that's not going away, but it's something that's so important as well, that businesses really need to embrace it and really need to roll out their flexible strategy.
Are they seeing more? Is there more? There's a conversation around contractors coming in and buying some incredible number, 15 years. Most of us will be contracted.
The gig society.
The gig society. Now, is that conversation being had by employers? And if so, what are they saying?
Well, a lot of employers are really, depending on where their business is at, they really like to bring contractors into the business, because they can have this wealth of experience and this wealth of knowledge and this wealth of skill set. They can bring somebody in for 6 months, implement kind of that wealth of knowledge and experience, and then basically kind of they part ways. So for businesses, it's a contracting thing is really good, because they're getting an element of expertise here that they probably wouldn't be able to afford in a full-time role. So from a contract perspective, it's really good for businesses. Really good.
This is why everyone, regarding, I mean, and I can see for you, placement is also contract too, helping people on that. Because it is really learning to show up in jobs. You can't hide in jobs anymore. And it's really, and that's why I love what I do, because I help people have that confidence kind of to go, well, who am I if I have to show up and create my job and wonder what I'm doing, without that fear factor. And it's because you're always stepping in that place of, I'm responsible, I have to show up and be my best, and what does that look like? And it's going to be hard for some people, which I'm sure you've seen in the work you've done, and I think if employers are talking about that change, then we all need to be aware of it.
I mean, there's a long way to go for this industry, and this is why kind of we're so passionate about Wise Women, is because media, marketing and advertising, there's some businesses that do flexibility well, but there is still a long way to go. And this is why kind of for us it's very important that we're out there and we're talking about flexibility, and we're talking about their importance. And look, flexibility is something different to everybody. What your flex is different to my flex. What my flex is different to different members that I meet on a daily basis. And I think it's just about kind of businesses really understanding kind of the outcome that can come from offering flexibility in the workplace.
Because one thing, just so you know, if you don't work in media and comms, is they're very long hours.
Yes.
And there's an expectation, and I know for a lot of businesses it's true that you need to stay there till like 9 or be available all the time. So having someone who understands, okay, let's get someone who can fulfill that, and be looked after. So you're as much interviewing the employer as much as the
absolutely. And kind of going back to the contract piece as well is that so with the members, we've got a real variety of members within Wise Women, and there's members that are basically just at the start of their kind of family stage of their career, so they're on maternity leave and they're wanting to come back flexibly. We've then got a pool of women that are entrepreneurs, and they've basically wanted to start their own business, and they're looking for project and contract work to really, I guess, help them just from a financial security perspective. And then we've got women that have kind of reached senior level roles within their career, and something's happened that's kind of shifted their priorities. They want to spend more time with their family, or there's been an illness or whatever it might be, and these women look for kind of that contract and project work. And the women that are kind of in this entrepreneurial place and kind of this place where they want to do contract work, they absolutely love doing it, because they get to go into a business, they get to work with a variety of different people, individuals, talent, teams. They get to look under the bonnet of different businesses that they might not necessarily always get the opportunity if they were seeking kind of the full-time permanent role. So for them, they get so much variety in their kind of working life, and get to work with different individuals, different businesses, and they're learning so much more than what they would if they were in a permanent full-time role for the next 2 to 5 years.
See, something to consider.
It's definitely something to consider. Yeah.
Wow, I could keep talking about this, but we will stop it there, and I'm sure we'll pick up the conversation another time.
Absolutely.
Because there's so much to be said about it, and I love your story and all your answers. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next week. Have a great week in the meantime, and this is over and out from Mrs. V on Shift Stories. Bye.